Today we're going to start with the Pacific. We're going to be talking about three main areas: Melanesia, which includes Australia and Papua New Guinea; Polynesia, which includes the Marquesa Islands and Tahiti and Samoa; and the Micronesia, which includes the Caroline Islands. Let's start off in Australia and start talking about dreaming. Dreaming, or Jukurpa, is an all-embracing concept that provides rules for living. It's a moral code. It's a way of interacting with the natural environment. It's a very holistic way of looking at things, so it's a total integrated way of life. This is practiced by the Walpiri and other Aboriginal people. Dreaming is not a mythology. It is very much a daily reality. So during the dreaming, ancestral beings in both human and animal form moved across the desert. As they traveled, they created features of the land, its waters, plants, animals, language, and even ceremonies. They established the moral, practical, and spiritual laws that still govern Aboriginal societies. At Journey's End, the ancestral beings returned to the earth, transforming themselves into waters, hills, rocks. Others became stars. So the Jukurpa, or dreaming, is also laws or protocols set by these ancestral beings who created the world. It describes the people's relationship to the place, to each other, to the natural environment, and how you're supposed to interact. Stories of these ancestral beings and how they shaped and created the world. That's kind of what dreaming is. So it's a very nebulous thing. So what we're looking at here is a visual representation of dreaming. We're going to have a couple of these. So you can see that they're very varied. One of the videos you're going to be listening to is about the Great Serpent, and so you're going to get to hear about the dreaming. There's two videos. One is about the specific story of the Great Serpent, and the other is going to tell you a little bit more about dreaming in general. So Kurawari is a visible pattern marker design associated with dreamtime forces. It can symbolize and represent them and events associated with them. So that's kind of what we've been looking at in the last several slides. Mana is another term we need to know, and that means sacred power. And so mana is going to be a very important concept throughout these various cultures. Mana can also be the manifestation of gods on earth. And so people who have royal blood have lots of mana because they descended from the gods. Mana can also be increased by good deeds or decreased by bad decisions. It's very important. It can increase, but it can also decrease. It's kind of an invisible force that links people to their ancestors and gods, and also enables artists to be creative. So that's kind of an interesting aspect. All right, so hunter and kangaroo. So spirits called Mimi, M-I-M-I, taught the art of painting to the Aboriginals. A Mimi figure appears kind of like in an X-ray style. So you can see that with the kangaroo here. He almost seems to be that you can see through his skin and see his organs and his spine. And this actually dates back, this style dates back to as early as 2000 BC. So it's a very old style. These can be found on rock formations in Australia. Mimis are sometimes considered to be fairy-like beings in the folklore. They tend to have thin, elongated bodies, and because of this, they can kind of blow in the winds. So, because they can blow away, they tend to spend their time living in rock crevices. They're also the beings that supposedly taught the Aboriginal peoples how to hunt and to prepare meat. So the Mimi, they thought, had human forms, these tall, thin, human forms. The Mimi also taught the people how to control fire, so the fire dealing with the cooking of the meats. They also taught how to hunt, how to weave, how to fish, how to paint, specifically painting on the rocks. They also taught them ceremonial songs, and they taught the medicine men their craft as well. Now remember, these ancient peoples, they're not going to have a written language, so these painting of these figures, this is how they pass down their stories. Now, Mimis were so shy, supposedly, that again they hid in these boulders, and they would come out at night by blowing holes in the rocks and emerging with their weapons and pets. So they had everything from crocodiles to kangaroos to wallabies, butterflies, fish, birds, turtles, you name it. And also, of course, snakes. That makes sense that the snakes are going to be weaving in and out of these rocks. So the Mimis generally are very calm in nature. They only get upset when an intruder kills or injures one of their pets. So you wouldn't want to kill one of these snakes or kangaroos or wallabies or crocodiles. Again, they would just go about their business and hunting all night long, and then go back and hide in the rocks during the day. So here is an example of some drawings of these Mimis, these tall, slender figures, again, on the rocks. So that was a more ancient one. This is a more contemporary. These two are contemporary artist versions of these Mimis. And this is a contemporary interpretation of a sacred land. You can kind of see the style here. So now we're going into Melanesia. And so culture appeared in Melanesia around 4000 BC, the Lapita people. And we're going to see that they use a lot of these circles, spirals, parallel lines. Here is a design from a Lapita pottery. And here's actually the pottery, so you can kind of see how it looks. And here's some other pieces of Lapita pottery. And again, there's some videos for you on Canvas about this. Alright, so now we're in New Guinea. So this is the Ambam stone. This is from the Ambam Valley, hence the name, in Papua New Guinea, and it dates to around 8000 BC. It's from a igneous rock. So the best thought is that this is an anteater, or maybe some sort of similar creature. It's at the very least, it's a creature with an elongated snout, humanoid body, and it's thought to be ancient stone mortar and pestle. It's about 8 inches high, to give you an idea of scale. The neck of the creature can be held in your hand, and then the base could have been used to pound food or other materials. It is considered to be one of the oldest of all sculptures made in Oceania, and it's made from gray wax stone. It's a very hard sedimentary stone. So this is thought to be a fetal form of a spiny anteater known as an echidna. Some people have also theorized it could be a bird or a fruit bat, or a now extinct type of marsupial. Now, there's actually an interesting story with this. In 2000, while on loan to a French art museum, the stone was accidentally dropped and shattered into 3 main pieces of stone. When the conservators started to put back together, they realized that it had actually been broken much earlier and mended. So it was probably mended around 1500 BC, so a long time ago. So this is before, as you can see, the break, after conservation. Here's some close-ups, and you can see how it broke. All right. This is the ceremonial house of the Abalam people. This is in East Sepik Province, again in Papua New Guinea. So this is kind of the setup in the ceremonial house. So it's actually this is a mannequin in the center dressed up. So if it's properly consecrated, spirits from the other world will reside in the mannequin and communicate with those taking part in the ritual. So all of this ritual has to do with growing yams. Yams are very popular and necessary in this area. And so when we're talking about yams, we're not talking about the little sweet potatoes we get at the store here. We're talking about a full-size yam being around 7 feet long. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And so these farmers, these Abalam farmers, must pass through a series of ceremonies. And so the elders explain the significance of all of these aspects, from sacred leaves, stones, shells, fruit, and they participate in the ceremony. And the ceremony is supposed to give the farmer power and magic needed to grow these yams to their full size. After the ceremony, this is no longer a sacred site. These buildings would tower up as high as 98 feet tall. So this is taller than even the tallest coconut palms. And they were constructed entirely without nails. They're all being held together by vines and ropes. So these novices would enter the house through a low tunnel-like entrance, and then enter into the scene that we see here. There's also a very small exit at the back. These ceremonies are not performed nearly as often as they used to be. The Abalam peoples have been converting to Christianity since the 1980s, and so these are not nearly as necessary as they once were. So here's one of the buildings that you see here. And here you can see that very small entrance. And you can see the decoration and all the time it takes to build one of these buildings. So this is the interior, and this is what the exterior would look like. And here is as the ceremony is being performed. Let's talk about these ancestral poles. This is, again, we're still in New Guinea. So these are created from mangrove tree trunks. Alright, so these can be up to 17 feet high. As you can see, the ones in the photo are that height. Now, they are meant to assist spirits and souls to leave the world of the living and go to the spiritual realm of the ancestors, the Safan. Master carvers go into isolation to create these poles, and they're only created for important people. These are focal points of a memorial feast honoring individuals who have recently died and become ancestors. Each figure on the poles represents and is named for a specific deceased individual. The idea is that the dead must be avenged. So in their cosmology, death was always caused by an enemy, whether directly in war or by malevolent magic. So even a natural death or death by natural causes would be considered to be by magic. And these deaths created an imbalance in the world that had to be corrected through the death of an enemy. So after a number of individuals in the village had died, male elders would decide to stage a B-I-S, feast. This would be in conjunction with a head-hunting raid. Today, they no longer practice head-hunting or the warfare, but they might still do the Biz feast to alleviate a crisis, or it could also be a connection with the male initiation ceremonies. So these are created out of, as I said, mangrove tree trunks. They're turned upside down. The trees were really treated as a fallen warrior when they were brought into the village. They were brought in with a lot of ceremony, fanfare, and honor. Here's another image so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. So the top part is the chemen, is the projecting part. As you can see here. As you can see from it's emanating from the body. This is the phallus. It's oftentimes abstracted into hornbill birds, fruit bats. We also have various symbols of head hunting integrated into these. There's one in a museum. Here's as they're actually carving this. So again, the chemen is the top part. The C, or the kano, is the structural part at the bottom. And that actually helps transport the spirits of the dead to the afterworld. Down here. And then that center is the Biz Anakat. And this is where you're portraying individuals, portraying the individual for whom the pole is named, other deceased relatives. So after the ceremony has taken place, they are taken back into the sago palm groves and left to rot. They are meant to go back to nature. And so interestingly enough, the forest The palm grove forest is associated with the female, so these are very male associated figures, and these are left in the female associated forest to go back to kind of Mother Earth. Grubs of the sago beetle are embedded in the core of these palms at the beginning of the carving, and they emerge as beetles. And when they emerge, it's time to be finished and to go back into the earth. The colors are also important. You can see the colors here. So we have white associated with the ancestors. This is produced by burning clamshells. We have red, that comes from clay. We know about red clay here in Oklahoma. That has to do with spiritual power. And black, which comes from the charcoal, is just meant to highlight the various features. This all has to do with the head hunting as well. So the cutting of the tree is kind of like a decapitation, removing the bark, that's skinning the enemy, the sap allowing to come out of the tree, that's allowing the blood to leave the enemy, and then taking this pole to the village, that's kind of the returning home with the corpse. So again, this all has to do with head hunting rituals. The cavity at the bottom of the pole is meant to hold the head of an enemy. So we've got some of these cavities here at the bottom. That's meant to hold your enemy's head. Again, today it is symbolic, but previously it was actually used. Some of these, again, the ones we saw earlier were 17 feet high. Some of them can be as high as 26 feet high. And these aren't done lightly. Again, these are done for important people. These feasts, sometimes these feasts can take several months to prepare and have several ceremonies within it. The most important aim of the feast was the deliverance of the descendants. These are allowing the dead to go into the next world and be at peace. At the very end of the ceremony, the thought is that the spirits are incarnated into the carving and once again alive. And so whenever you take these out to the forest to disintegrate, to go back to the earth, that is when these descendants, this is when these spirits are meant to leave these poles. And to help facilitate that, they were also oftentimes broken apart with an axe to help release the spirits and release the poles back to the earth. Okay, I thought I'd actually tell you a little bit about this mask that we have at the museum. You might have seen it. It's quite striking. It's a Baining fire dance mask. Again, we're still in Papua New Guinea. It's made out of bamboo and reeds and bark cloth. We'll talk a little bit more about bark cloth in a little bit. They use berries to dye the red. And then we've got some vines to lash it all together. Originally, it probably would have had some bird feathers, maybe even some leaves around it as well. So, the Baining fire dance, this is a male-oriented dance. There are some videos on Canvas of the Baining fire dance, and its associated Baining day dance, which is for the women. So this would have been worn on top of the head. The dancers enter in front of the chorus. They're circling around a fire, hence Baining fire dance. And they oftentimes run through the flames or even kick the coals even towards the audience sometimes to throw up a big shower of sparks. Um, and originally this is a male only dance, and men were the only ones allowed to watch as well. The bark cloth. The bark cloth is made from beating the inner bark of a paper, mulberry, or breadfruit tree until the fibers separate. This is flattened out and then soaked in a stream, flattened out by stones and bleached by the sun. It's painted with, as you can see, the red and black pigment. Red is, again, sometimes it's berries, sometimes it's chewed tuber roots, or even sometimes a little bit blood is mixed in. Depends on what is available. The black is created from the burnt outer husk of a coconut and mixing it with sugarcane water. And the brush would have been a stick with this chewed end. There's some examples of one being worn and another one in another museum. Again, the female dances the day dance, and that's actually associated with the fruits of the harvest. So it has to do with growth, fertility, and therefore the harvest. So male is typically associated with the hunting, female associated with the growing of fruits and vegetables. This is a tableau from New Ireland in Melanesia. This has to do with an initiation ceremony of boys entering adulthood. Each figure is carved from one piece of wood. You can see these kind of open work carved designs. These also have to do with honoring the dead and allowing them to rest peacefully. We see this throughout a lot of the different cultures. These were meant to be used on, again, one occasion and then destroyed. The idea of keeping them is very much a Western concept. You're going to see some fish and birds and other kind of creatures kind of integrated into these designs.